In a time when it's few and far between that we actually get excited graphically for Quest games, 11 days ago Meta released a tech demo called North Star, and they seem extremely proud of it. It only lasts about 20 minutes, but there's a couple of things that piqued my interest today upon reading the technical notes of what this demo actually represents. For me, the Meta Quest 3 has not had the developer support for things like higher frame rates and better resolutions it should have in some games, but when the headset's extra power compared to Quest 2 is made use of, we do get some really good looking games and graphics. But as I said, it just doesn't seem to happen very often, with developers still targeting Quest 2 as the main focus for development. And this is why North Star is something I wanted to check out today. Firstly, it has Meta's XR Interaction SDK for Unreal Engine, and can be used with hand tracking as well as controllers. Now obviously, hands in VR are critical to immersion, and some games we get feel like you just have plastic hands that barely have any movement and they don't react to the environment. But when hands are done well, like in Batman for example, where it can be quite stunning just seeing your fingers move realistically with each other and items in the game's world, it's something you want to see every single time. So that technology is here in North Star. There's also application space warp, which is the main reason I wanted to fire this up today, because throughout my time covering Quest games, application space warp has been a very mixed bag for me. Sometimes it's used to great effect, but it can also lead to some awful ghosting, making fast moving things on screen, including your hands and arms, look distorted. And if you're not sure what space warp is, in simple terms it's basically the same as reprojection on PSVR 2, where devs can target higher frame rates and make a game that runs at 36 frames, for example, actually run at 72 by doubling frames that aren't even really there. They can also push it to 45 FPS, giving you 90, or 60 to give you 120. Now space warp was quoted to lead to some high fidelity visuals, but for me, I find space warp pretty troublesome overall, for the reasons I just mentioned. But when games like Ghost Town and most likely Batman use space warp, I would argue you don't really notice it's there, and that's when you get an awesome result. And since North Star is supposedly the ultimate and latest example of good implementation of this for Quest 3, I wanted to see this for myself. North Star does actually have some incredible graphics if you can ignore things like teleportation movement, which I actually don't like at all, and voices that sometimes come from the wrong direction. And throughout my time in North Star, there is plenty of impressive parts to this demo that I want everyone to check out. The sea actually looks extremely impressive, and probably the best water effects I've seen on Quest and maybe VR in general. It easily holds itself up against any other game that features the sea on PCVR and PSVR 2, with there only being one other example that I would say had better, and that's Kayak VR Mirage. When you look at your right hand, it is covered in what looks like liquid metal and appears to have some impressive real-time reflections. And then there's the rope physics in combination with your hand movement and reactions, and even though your hands do clip in and out sometimes, and I didn't really notice any haptics, when you actually hold the rope and move it between the metal objects of the ship when you have to fasten the sails, it does look and feel pretty good. The shadows are especially good, and something definitely worth noting, because we simply don't get shadows very often in Quest games. The game itself is pretty boring and more of an excuse to experience the visuals, so that's not what you or I should be focusing on when you play this. But there's definitely something here. About 10 minutes into the demo, the ship gets attacked by a giant kraken during a storm. And again, it's all pretty impressive stuff. Then you go under the water and into the sea in a submarine. And again, it all looks lovely, and before you know it, you're then back at the main menu. As a tech demo for what Quest 3 can do, I feel like I've seen good, if not better, in some titles already. I still think Red Matter 2 and Ghost Town are more visually striking, but there's still something definitely here, even if the game experience itself is flawed. There's also a free sail mode too, which is probably the most enjoyable part of the experience, and if you want to give it a go yourself, it's free to download via the link in this description, or you can simply search North Star on the Meta Store. Well, that's all I've got for you today. It was only a quick one, but I do appreciate any likes and subscriptions, and let me know if you do check out North Star, and let me know your thoughts on it down in the comment section.